Welcome back. It is Xavier D. Johnson here again, and this time we're going to talk about some of my favorite stuff. I am really into malware, and so what I want to do was actually show you guys some of the more malwares that have been causing some problems lately over the summer. Right. So the summer months are typically times in which you see an increase in attacks. So what I want to do is kind of profile a few that I've been following. The first one was a backdoor that was targeted at Exchange servers, right? Using email attachments using stenography. Now you're probably thinking, what in the world? What? Okay, so just in case you don't know what Exchange is, they're mail servers, and this is Microsoft's mail servers, right? So if you run your, your enterprise mail, you have blah 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 at company.com, you're probably running some kind of Exchange mail server. The fact that the commands were actually being sent in what looks like JPEGs and PDFs with specially crafted commands inside of otherwise useless data that the Microsoft Exchange server would then respond to. It also seems like the people who developed this were extremely non-picky about the people that they targeted. So we're talking people such as military, government, embassies, education, research, pharmaceutical. Super interesting. So it looks like light neuron Turla, which was, I think it's the full name here, was brought to light by Kaspersky. Kaspersky is very good at doing research and analysis on malwares. They are highly aware of things that happen on the internet, and they sometimes give us great info and insight on exactly what's happening out there. So it looks like not only was this targeting Windows, but it also targeted Unix, right? Targeting postfix and SendMail servers. What was really interesting about this, right? The way that persistence happened looks like Exchange has something called transport agent. And transport agent was used in the persistent stage, so keeping their campaign alive, right? And it looks like since they use the transport agent, it actually runs as the same levels of permissions as things like spam filters. So now they're able to see and even alter emails that are going through this email server, right? Which allows them to be able to push their specially crafted JPEGs or PDF attachments, which have the commands encoded using stenography. And then it goes ahead and runs these commands. This is scary stuff. This is very advanced and not typical of very smaller campaigns, but this is what we're moving towards, right? My next one that I wanted to talk about here was the Silence APT group, right? So the Silence APT group are using what looks like malware that has been used by the TA505, which is best known for distributing Dridex. Dridex is a banking trojan, right? That actually does high volume malicious email campaigns, which entices users to be able to log into their banks and log into their credit card accounts so that they could phish for credentials. This is then leveraged for the sale of these credentials or further frauds. So it looks like before, Silence was more just like a copycat group, right? More mistake prone as is what they were described as. But now they're starting to move more in a organized way. This gang is starting to be much more organized. Another thing that has changed is they have some new tools. It looks like they have a fileless loader written in PowerShell called iVoke. That is intense, right? So we're talking fileless. It never touches your disk. A lot of the times your anti-malware probably won't see this, right? And then EDA, another malicious PowerShell tool that's based on Empire PowerShell, which we all know is extremely useful and powerful. And it looks like they're using this to attack ATMs. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It looks like they're using something called XFS display.exe, disp.exe, and that is a Trojan that they're using for ATM. So they're just 100% about money. It looks like, they're expanding their geography, and they're starting to get more and more aggressive around how to generate this income. Now, MegaCortex. This is something that has been a little overlooked, underreported, and I wanted to kind of bring this to light, right? So this is something that people had a hard time actually figuring out how it worked. But it looks like we're finally understanding exactly what this malware, particularly what this ransomware, is doing. So when we first heard about it, Sophos analyzed the computers that these people were, submitting, like, hey, we're having a problem. We've had a breach. Sophos comes out. They want to come do incident response, right? So what they do is they analyze the victim computers, and then they would find that the attackers were gaining access to the network and then immediately attacking the Windows domain controller, right? And so now, once you got the domain controller hacked, you can start to push commands down to all of the different endpoints, right? And it looks like what the attackers did to maintain persistence is use something called Cobalt Strike, which is a fairly affordable tool at about $3,000 a year, I believe. It could be one-time fee, actually. So they were able to use what is called PS exec, which is PowerShell execute, basically, and it would actually distribute a batch file and a ransomware known as winit.exe to the rest of the computers on the network. That is it right there, right? So you got this compromise of a domain controller, persistence, and command and control through something called Cobalt Strike, and immediately you're using the default standard way of communicating with all of the hosts that are a part of this group, and passing commands that are malicious. So just yesterday, Tom Lawrence actually demonstrated how people could use Screen Connect for this very same thing. But in the event that Screen Connect is installed, most places have a domain, right? So this is pretty rough. So we get down into the encryption process. It looks like they actually got a certificate from a UK company named Abdan Pizza. It's interesting, right? So basically what happens is it's a base 64 encoded string that's a DLL payload impact and injected into memory. Again, fileless from that perspective. So this is one of those harder to detect things. And by the time you do detect it, it's probably already encrypting your files. The files that it goes after are DLL, exe, .sys, .mui, .tmp, .lnk. These are the things that your computer needs to run. Desktop.ini, ntuser.dat, ntuser.ini. This is like Windows machines won't work properly without these things. So yeah, this was one that I actually wanted to show. And of course, all ransomwares come with a ransom note. The next thing that I want to talk about was something called GermanWiper. And GermanWiper is very aggressive because what it does is it wipes the data, and then it still doesn't, it still asks for a ransom. So it's like, hey, give me money and I'll give you your data back. And then you give them money and they just wipe it anyway. So that's aggressive. It looks like the first time that this malware was actually spotted was Monday, July 29th. And there was a huge uptick in submissions, and then it went back down over the next couple of days. So it looks like the way that this malware is being spread is through what is called mal spam, so malicious spam, and it's someone pretending to be a job applicant. And what's interesting about this is there's an attachment passed along that has a PDF in it, and this PDF actually has a payload, an LNK shortcut that executes a PowerShell command that downloads a HTA file from expandingdelegation.type and launches it on the local machine. So that is intense, right? This is one of those don't click on every email you get. But what if you're a recruiter? What if your job is literally to click on links and read resumes? This is scary stuff. It literally just overwrites your data with zeros and it destroys it. It just wants to wipe it. It doesn't even focus on encrypting it. It just overwrites it, turns it all into nulls and zeros, and done. Finished. Ouch. Next one I want to talk about is something that I'm not going to be able to pronounce properly, but Sodinakabai. There you go. Ransomware. And this is something that me and Tom actually just talked about yesterday on How They Got Hacked. If you aren't subscribed to How They Got Hacked, go subscribe to How They Got Hacked. We have a live show every Friday at 7:30, in between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. And we have a whole lot of fun and we talk about a whole lot of things. So earlier this year, there was a bug in Oracle WebLogic that allowed attackers to gain full access. It was called CVE 2019-2725. Even though Oracle released the patch, there is a lot of people out there that don't do patching. So what we found are that people are using this Oracle WebLogic vulnerability and installing ransomwares. Yes, ransomwares. It is the hotness. It's what people do. It's how people make money, and that's just kind of a thing, right? So like how to protect yourself, right? Make sure that you log and centrally collect web application operating system events, restrict the access to the account used to run WebLogic, right? Monitor signs for compromise, so egress, ransomware canary files, external posts to new URIs, web shells, etc. There's a whole list of things here on the screen. Pay attention to this stuff. Take this seriously. Or better yet, you could just patch, right? Patching is always a way to be able to save your ass. So we're going to go to what is my last thing that I want to bring to you, but is one of the more scary campaigns. We're talking about the Fileless campaign called Ashtaroth. Ashtaroth was made aware to me by Microsoft. And that's when you know things are scary. When Microsoft has found this first and they're diving deep into it, it is scary, right? So this actually has a very complex attack chain, right? And what it drops after the attack chain is info stealing backdoor called Ashtaroth. It's all fileless. It gets loaded into memory, right? So there's a bunch of payloads that get downloaded after a spear phishing email lands, and the LNK file actually gets double clicked, and then the WMIC tool actually runs, and it uses a bit of JavaScript abusing the bits admin tool, and actually goes to get a few strings of base 64, which then gets injected into memory as DLLs, and then bad stuff happens. So we're talking about a stealer Trojan. So they're not here to, ruin your life. They're not here to wipe all your data. They're not here to encrypt your data, but they're here to steal it, which could be even worse, right? Like, what if you have the jet plans? What if you have encryption keys? They're here to take all of that. What's interesting is that Microsoft Defender ATP is blocking, right? And they're the ones who have found this and made it apparent. But oh, look, actually right here, update. The campaign was discovered by Cofense in 2018, actually. There you go. So Cofense actually found early phishing, distributing Ashtaroth before Windows Defender ATP did. But nevertheless, this is where we're at right now when it comes to malwares. This is where we're at right now when it comes to advanced persistent threats. And what you need to do is make sure that you're patching all of your systems. You need to start, rotating your passwords. Make sure that you don't have password reuse. Don't use company emails for personal things. And MFA and 2FA everything you possibly can, right? And as your system administrator, you need to stay on top of your indicators of compromise, right? So when things are emerging, when you have emerging threats, be aware of those emerging threats, find the indicators of compromise, and actually go hunt for those threats in your environment. There's tools that will help you with threat hunting and actually managing your indicators of compromise. I would say invest in some of that. We're moving at a place in which, Sally from HR is going to open up the resume. It's going to happen. If this is otherwise unpatched, it's going to compromise you, and you will be responsible for it as the admin in the environment. So save yourself a little bit of pain. Go out, patch your services. Make sure that you have 2FA to get on the VPN. Make sure you take everything that doesn't need to be on the internet off of the internet. Make it VPN only. And I think you'll have a better chance, right? Backup often. Have a multitude of backups, not just one centralized backup. Don't back up to the same disk. Shard your backup so that there are a number of places. Leverage cloud solutions, and make God be with you, because it is a hard time in security right now. We're up against a lot. We have a lot of advanced persistent threats that are motivated by income, entire nation states that are wanting to make money. We're seeing, some of these campaigns grow from just making $800,000 a year to, $4.8 million a year now. The same malwares over a period of 12 months. So what you want to make sure is you are not enabling this to continue by not paying attention and not remaining vigilant. And that is what I'm going to leave you on. My name is Xavier D. Johnson. Follow me on social media at Infinite on Twitter, at Xavier_Johnson on Instagram. I hope to hear from you guys soon. Peace.